Protests continued in Philadelphia last night after the Monday shooting of Walter Wallace Jr. Wallace, a 27-year-old father, son, and aspiring rapper, was killed by 2 police officers near his house in West Philadelphia. On the afternoon of the 26th, local dispatch reportedly received 3 separate 911 calls from Wallace's family, saying that Wallace, a longtime sufferer of bipolar disorder, was in distress and needed an ambulance.
I called the police and I said that my son is PSPS. I told the police that he was in stress and under pressure, and maybe we might have a little BB gun, but they shot him 14 times. They killed my son. For what?
You're hearing the voice of Wallace's mother, Kathy, who told police on arrival that her son was going through a bipolar episode and spent the last moments of his life trying to de-escalate the situation. Video from a nearby cell phone camera shows Wallace walking around holding a knife as the 2 officers point guns at him and his mother attempts to calm him down. Wallace's community remembers him as a quiet family man who struggled with his mental health. As we neared the 18th Precinct Police Building, where the protests were centered, we found a community in grief. Local anger was not only directed at police stationed around the neighborhood, but also at a specific type of protesters. At the corner of 55th and Pine Street, we met a group of local pastors and community members who had arrived hoping to promote peace during the protests. What they found was the latest in a pattern of mostly white protesters coming in from the wealthier counties outside of Philadelphia when a police shooting made national news. I got to speak to Melissa Robbins, who was there with the group.
I'm out here with a group of local pastors and a couple of people from the district attorney's office that came out here and talked to our community members and try to maintain some level of peace because people are dying and being hurt unnecessarily.
Members of the group said that the best way for white activists and those outside of the community to help was to show up also when mass protests weren't going on, to meet the individuals in the community and take direction from the neighborhood as to what the actual local issues are that put Black lives at risk, rather than bringing in their own political agenda.
This group here, I don't know. We think they're Antifa, but we don't know what that means. Antifa doesn't mean a whole lot to black people because we live our black lives every day. They dress up in black periodically and come to the neighborhood. What they do, we don't know. So to be an ally to black people is to get to know black people, is to communicate with black people. When you come into somebody's community, you got to introduce yourself. We black people can't go to Montgomery County. We can't go to Bucks County. We can't go to Delco and just do what we want to do, but they do.
These grassroots organizations are not getting fed properly to interact with our young people. You tell them.
Elsewhere in West Philly, local activists Brandon T. Mr. Motivator Jones and Michael O.G. Law Tabang took the protest on the move. Driving through the streets of Cobb's Creek, the Hard Knock University van came to a stop in front of a police line at 52nd and Chestnut. Mr. Motivator had brought his family along for the ride. Both men spoke to the crowd of protests in front of them, but also the police line behind them.
We have an agenda, Mr. Officer. I ain't come up here to fool with you like I ain't a real human being. I'm not a superhero. I can take my uniform off and show you who I really am. My name Michael Tabang. I'm from West Philadelphia. And these is my babies. And yes, I'll fight to the death for them if necessary, but I would prefer to live for them too. These young people, listen to this, some of you black people that's in officer uniform. You had people who was willing to fight and die for your freedom. That allowed you to become an officer. Well, you got some children right now that's out here that's willing to give their lives to make sure they don't have to live like their ancestors used to live back in the day.
As we were leaving, we heard O.G. Law speak directly to the same issue that the group on 55th and Pine had addressed previously, warning the white suburban crowd not to instigate or incite violence, lest it fall back on the local residents. If you're going to cause trouble, he said, you better have bail for everyone here. Wallace's death is the latest example of the disproportionate police violence against the mentally ill. 1 in 4 people fatally shot by police struggle with severe mental illness, and the numbers get even worse when accounting for race, with only 1 in 3 Black American adults who need mental health treatment receiving proper care. Philadelphia has imposed a curfew for Wednesday night to prevent further protests, but has yet to release the identities of the officers involved in the shooting or the body cam footage of the incident. My takeaway from Tuesday's protests was that being a true ally involves much more than just showing up when a police shooting makes national news and disappearing as soon as it falls out of the headlines. The violence that happens every day and the conditions that perpetuate it are just as urgent when there is not an incident as widely covered as the shooting of Walter Wallace Jr. As Melissa Robbins taught me, the biggest hurdle between performative and genuine allyship is empathy, familiarity, and understanding of the people and community affected. With WCU's The Quad, this is Brendan Lordan.
My soul, I'm tired of going through all this pain. I'm tired of seeing my people in shame, and that shit fucked up. We deserve the better things in life. Y'all ain't treating us right. Y'all ain't treating us right. Y'all gonna find things in the news, saying that loot and all that stuff ain't cool. But we do what y'all do. This is modern day slavery. Them stimulants ain't changing me, ain't saving me.